then participating in journaling. So Mandy is here, and I asked her to come for the first hour to answer questions as you all have started working on your Providence Park um, project. And I'm going to actually start after she introduces herself. I'm going to start with a 4.5 minute AI generated video of the assignment so that Mandy knows exactly what it is that you all are doing, at least for the group part of this assignment. So Mandy, introduce yourself.
Well, thank you all for your introductions. Um, I think, can you all hear me now?
Mm-hmm.
Okay, great. Thank you all for your introductions. I graduated from ULR myself. I'm a non-traditional student, social work undergrad, social work graduate, and political science undergrad. And just thankful to be here tonight. And, uh, at Providence Park, I'm the director of neighborhood partnerships. This is my dream job. I don't think many people can say that. And so it's an honor to be in this position. And I think that the project is it, it's a gift to Central Arkansas. And so I kind of want to start with that. But how who am I? I'm from North Carolina originally. I moved here in '09, I think, and I've been doing social work since 2012. Um, I started out at Jericho Way as Jericho Way is the city's day resource center. It is a private public partnership between the city of Little Rock and DePaul, USA. And they provide crisis services to people living unsheltered. And so um, I have served the unsheltered population the the entirety of my professional career, um, and that has been my focus. Um, and so, as a result of that, that has moved me into this position. And at Jericho Way, I became the director, and we built housing. And I've done a number of things with institutions. For example, I won't work for the police department, but I've worked with the police department. I won't work for city government, but I work with city government. And so, to build better systems in place that incorporate social workers where social workers need to be, and historically have been, but for better or for worse, the institutions have sort of divorced each other, you know? Um, Social workers and cops, they're different, but they both need each other. And so um, they need to sort of remarry, if you will. And so you see this remarriage. It's not pleasant. There's a lot of conflict, but it needs to happen, and it is happening. It's slow going, if you will. And so I typically work a full-time job, but do some of that work on the side, not paid ever, because I never know if it's going to succeed. So, so all that to say, it's my passion. And it's been my life's work. And so it has led me to Providence Park. At the beginning of this year, Aaron asked me to join the team. We talked about it for 3 months before I decided to join. To make sure it was a right move for the both of us. I was her first hire. So, like I said at the beginning of this introduction, it was an honor, and it's a huge honor. And so, what is Providence Park? It's a 50-acre master community to serve the chronically unsheltered. And my role in that is, as the director of neighborhood partnerships, is to look at partners around our community and see what can they bring to this neighborhood that we're building, right, to make it work. Um, and that's what I do. And so, but I do a little bit more as a social worker. So, for example, the application went live, and so providers are our partners as well. So providers who are providers, Jericho Way, River City, Canvas community, right? People who serve organizations that serve the unsheltered, that I'm very familiar with given my background. So I go to those organizations and I educate them on the application. And then when people fill out the application, I meet one on one with them because at the heart of all of this, I'm also a case manager and love doing case management work and working one on one with people. And so I love to move up and down the micro macro scale of social work, and this role gives me the opportunity to do that. So that's a little bit about me. I am on the board of the School of Social Work. David Deere is a dear friend of mine, and we decided that the School of Social Work needed a board, and we created it. And so I don't think I'll ever be removed. I don't know. I've been on it for a long time, and so I do that. And I think I'm on Interfaith Power and Light. I work closely with harm reduction and some other organizations in town. I hardly ever say no. I'm not risk adverse. So I think that's all, April. I don't think there's much
Yes,
else.
I want to ask one clarification question for some of our listeners, our class members who might not be as familiar with social work. You mentioned the micro and macro parts of
Mhm.
social work. Can you define both of those?
So I'm a macro social worker. I've graduated with my graduate degree in macro social work, meaning community social work.
Mm.
And so I actually was an intern for Mark Pryor. I wanted to be a legislative aide and do that work, but as you know, Tom Cotton won, and I had to go get a real job, and that led me to Jericho Way. And so all that to say, I do both. I can work with individuals and communities, and I like doing both. Um, um, and so I've been privileged to be in that position. But I don't typically like I'm not a therapist. So you see social workers that do therapy. I'm not a therapist, but I can do case management. I have created programs, and I can work with communities. And so all that combined, and my experience in that has helped me in this position at this moment because right now we need community partners, which is community work. We
Mhm.
need providers to be educated on the application, and we need to work with individuals who are currently applying, who might not have their documents or might have barriers to applying, or might just need a case manager to help them with the application. And I can do those things with them and enjoy that. So all that to say, it's an honor, and that's led me to this position.
Well, that's great. So Mandy, what you don't know is what I've been doing behind the scenes to get them ready for the project that they're doing. And you don't know exactly what the project is and how it's kind of unfolded. So I put all of my documents in. Tony loves this because
Ah,
we've been trying AI stuff in the class, and I put all my documents into Google Notebook LM that described the assignment. And it created for me, I'm only going to show the 4.5 minutes for you, Mandy, but the other part of it I'll give to the guys, I mean, everybody to be able to watch later. But I'm going to share my screen, and then this 4.5 minutes will be kind of a description of what they are creating for you all. At this point, we have two groups. There's a group that's working on the processes. It's actually similar to what they watched the community first interview that we did. And so I have one group that's a neighbor to neighbor group, and I have another group that's a property management group. So they're creating structures that they're going to have as a recommendation for you all when they get finished at their final project. So let's see, Tony, you'll have to say, all the videos that Notebook LM turns out look the same. Okay. But they have different content. So if you've ever seen one, it's going to be like, oh, yeah, this is another one of those. But this will at least describe and get everybody on the same page, which is what my goal was. So let me share this, and we'll listen to this first 4.5 minutes.
Let's dive into your final project for COM 7237. Now, before your brain goes into final assignment mode, I want you to think about this a little differently. This isn't just about getting a grade. No, this is a real mission with real stakes at a real place called Providence Park.
And the project guide itself really nails it. It says, this is not a test, but a culminating experience. And that's exactly right. This is your shot to take everything we've talked about, all the theories, all the models, and actually apply them in a messy, meaningful, real-world situation. So really, let go of that test anxiety. This is all about showing what you can do.
I get it. When you first look at a project this big, it can feel kind of overwhelming, right? Like you're staring at a huge, tangled ball of yarn. Well, over the next few minutes, we're going to untangle that ball piece by piece. My promise to you is that by the end of this, you'll have a super clear roadmap to turn that chaos into a confident plan for success. Okay, first things first. What is your mission? Well, you're officially stepping out of the student role and into the role of a consultant. Your client is a real community, Providence Park Village. And your goal? It's huge. You're going to design a conflict system that can make a genuine, positive impact on people's actual lives.
So what is it that you're building exactly? The core idea here is something called a trauma-informed conflict system. Now, this isn't just a bunch of rules and procedures. It's about creating a process that fundamentally respects the people involved. It's about prioritizing their dignity, making sure their voice is actually heard, and giving them real choices. That principle, that's going to be your North Star for this entire project.
Now, the good news is you're not doing this alone. The class is going to be split into 2 large teams. And while you both share the same goal, designing that system, each team is going to tackle a different but equally important side of the challenge at Providence Park. So what does that actually look like on the ground? Well, you've got the property management team. They're going to tackle the official, the structural conflicts. Think lease violations, formal reporting, that kind of thing. Then you have the neighbor-to-neighbor team, and they're diving into the much messier human side of things. You know, the personal arguments that can really make or break a community's vibe. Let's dig into the details for each one. Okay, so if you're on the property management team, you are in the trenches of the official systems. And this goes way beyond just noise complaints or pets. You're dealing with deep-seated feelings of injustice from the residents. The real puzzle to solve here is designing a system that can balance that tricky line between privacy and transparency and making sure everyone, staff and residents, are on the same page every single time. Now, if you're on the neighbor-to-neighbor team, your whole world is about human dynamics. This could be anything from arguments over loud music to disputes about borrowing money that just escalate. And what's really fascinating here is the complexity underneath it all. You're dealing with long-lasting resentment, and sometimes behaviors that are driven by untreated health conditions. Your job is to design a system that can handle these incredibly sensitive, deeply personal conflicts.
So, you've got all these great ideas. How do you actually present your solutions? Well, your team is going to create a comprehensive proposal, and it's built from 3 essential pieces. Seriously, think of these as your toolkit for creating real, lasting change.
It all breaks down into 3 key documents: the Systems and Process Guide, the Group Resource Guide, and an executive summary. Each piece has a really specific job to do, and when you put them all together, they create a super powerful professional proposal. Let's start with the absolute heart of the project, that Systems Guide. Okay, the Systems and Process Guide. This is the big one. It's the absolute heart of your project. This is your practical, how-to, operational manual. It's the document that someone at Providence Park could literally pick up and know exactly how your proposed system works day in and day out. I know that sounds like a lot, but don't worry, it's broken down into 4 clear, manageable sections. First, you'll just describe the types of conflicts your team is focused on. Easy enough. Second, you'll define who does what, getting those roles and responsibilities crystal clear. Third, you'll map out the step-by-step process for reporting and referrals. And finally, you'll recommend how to keep this whole system alive and breathing with regular meetings and feedback loops.
All right, so that covers the big group work. But this project isn't just about what the team.
All right, that's the first 4.5 minutes, and we'll talk about the individual parts after Mandy leaves. So, and you all have already had this assignment assigned. Mandy, I hope that is somewhat similar to what you and Aaron and I talked about after our community first interview. But that's what they're planning on coming up with. So at this point, I'm not changing the assignment, but they have questions for you. Yeah, and initial thoughts there, if you want to share. So
That's great. I mean, it's concise and yeah, I'd love to hear their questions.
yeah. So you guys are supposed to be meeting with your teams. And right now we've got Jeff and Doc Rice that are on a team with about 4 or 5 other people. And then we've got Tony and Kat on a team with about 4 or 5 other people. And so I know I've already gotten questions that some of your team, Lindsay's wrote me a question. I don't remember which team she's on. Tony, you've emailed me. So I know that some of your teams have already maybe started talking, but this is your chance to be asking Mandy anything you want to be able to know about Providence Park, where they are currently. I know that they've already got a couple of tiny homes or maybe even more up because I've been watching the Facebook feed come through. And so maybe we'll start there, Mandy. I'll ask the first question and then I'll let them ask the others. Tell us what is happening currently. What do you have done? You just said the application was open, so
Yeah.
you've got people applying to actually live there.
Mhm.
But what's happening on the ground?
Yeah, so phase one is well underway, and we've broken ground on phase two, thanks to some additional funding from the county. So Pulaski County is our biggest funder and partner in this work. Um, we have laid the first 10 slabs, and walls are up on the first 3 homes. Um, of those 10 slabs, 8 are stick built and 2 will be 3D printed. Um, so we plan to build the first 10 right now, and put neighbors into homes, hopefully at the beginning of the year. And that is because the infrastructure is taking longer than we planned. So the kitchen, bathroom, laundry is what, the infrastructure that's necessary for the individuals to move into their homes. So the homes are the fastest thing that will go up, but the infrastructure takes a lot longer to build. So the community buildings, the medical clinic, the KBLs, kitchen, bathroom, laundry, those take longer. And so as a result, it'll be after the first of the year. We hoped it would be at the end of the year, but it'll be after the first of the year. And we probably will only move in a couple of people. Community First has been open for 20 years. And I think that they've only ever moved in 12, 12, maybe 17 people in 1 month. And so it's slow, intentionally slow. And so we would only move in, to begin with, a couple of people, and then go from there. Uh, so, so yeah, that's where we're at right now.
Do you have missionals already that are committed to starting to move in? And just as a reminder, I think you guys probably remember this from the original podcast interview. Missionals are the equivalent. I compare them to resident assistants or dorm mothers in the academic world, but they have their own home. They may be living there with their families, but they are kind of the liaison on the ground with for you all. So do you have people already that are committing to that?
Yeah, we do. We have a family, and I think of them as like intentional neighbors. So these are people that it's sort of the secret sauce of the, you know, of of it all. Otherwise, it's concentrated poverty, right?
Mm.
So um, yes, we do. I, I'll say, without this person has not, this is not a full commitment, but yes, and it is a family, with 4 children. We did not necessarily foresee this, but so if this is a 3D printed home, we didn't have the blueprints for this, but so we're working on it. But yeah, yeah.
Okay. All right, I'm gonna open it up to you all to ask questions based on, and I know a couple of you are on the project management team and a couple of you are on the neighbor to neighbor team. So what do you need to know? This is your chance to ask.
Uh, yeah, Mandy. So as we're working through this project, I get the idea that you need a system, something that you can work because like Community First, they didn't have a system in place to follow. I watched the whole interview, took detailed notes on everything that Jared said, and I'm on the property management side, so I kind of really benefited from that because he had a
Yeah.
lot to say. Um, I know that in that interview, he offered you a lot of resources that they use, like incidents reports. I mean, I worked in private security, so sure, I could come up with an incident report, but it would not be tailored because it's out of my wheelhouse. I mean, I have background in psychology, but social work, they deviate
Hmm.
extremely. So I was hoping that we could get access to those because we're going to be focused on how that runs through the system as I understand it, addressing the conflicts that could occur within certain groups that we've generated, and then moving from there. So I was hoping if we could get access to those documents to kind of give us a template idea that would be helpful. And then also if there's a detailed list of the partners that you have, because I know that there were a couple of partners like the rehabilitation and substance abuse partners that you had asked about in
Hmm.
order to know, because as I understood it from the community first, they would get almost every report and then they'd have to kind of decide where that report goes.
Yeah.
Or they would send it over to support services, and then they would reach out to the partners themselves to build the plan for going forward. And some of those I think would be helpful to kind of at least give you a base template so that you can start documenting early and have it set in place. Because it looks like this project is going to be filled at filling a gap that they did not have in the beginning, which was an actual structured, documented system for how everything moves through. So when we're talking about stuff like that, especially for those like me, I don't have experience. Uh, I can conceptualize it, but I don't
Hmm.
have direct experience on knowing the actual steps that will need to be done. So any kind of documentation to help fill those gaps would be extremely helpful for my group, especially.
Absolutely. And thank you for bringing up the detailed list of partners because I'm realizing now that I've not heard back. I think I know we reached out to at least two of those partners that were mentioned and to get a meeting with them, and I've not heard back. So I need to follow up with them.
Yes,
Um,
and what specifically they cover,
yeah,
because, it might be able to if we like because it seemed, Community First had I know it was Jared and the other young lady, her name is escaping me right now, but it would go to
Megan.
her and then yeah,
Hmm.
she kind of sought out the appropriate partner
Hmm.
for covering the
Hmm.
event. I mean, things are pretty base when you're talking about could this be dragons in the lawn? This needs to go over to them, and then that becomes a mental health issue that needs to be addressed, or even issues of paranoid schizophrenia. But if we
Yeah, we were
knew
thinking.
who was there,
Yeah, we were thinking after that call, Aaron and I, that we would have one incident report with an option for property management or neighbor care to click on there, right? And then if it went to neighbor care, there would be the four options there with partners connected to those four options. And I had a good idea of the comparable partners that we have locally, but I wanted to still talk to those partners in Austin that were mentioned to just make sure that I was on the right page. Uh, so yeah, and the conflict partner that would be on site, we just don't have like, so who would meet with those two individuals, right? So although there might be a process in place, who's going to actually sit down with those two individuals? Because that justice partner, they're on site. And so I've been to Austin several times, but I've not been able to physically meet with them. So I'd like to see what does that look like. Um,
you
the,
almost need a hub, somebody who gets
Mhm.
the information and who is very good. I mean, they could you have an AI assist them, like an agent mode that helps them source things out, but somebody who's very good who can piece apart what's really going on from the documented material before they ever get to it. And that's going to be difficult because that takes a trained eye to understand a wide spectrum of where this could fall into what bucket. But if we know the process that you're wanting us to connect, it makes it easier because like the document system, I don't know if that would be on the neighbor side or if that would be on the staff side where they're selecting where they think it should go. Because you'd almost need a third option if it's on the neighbor side, they may not have any idea what where their problem lies. It's that's kind of like jargon. It's like where does your problem lie? Well, I have no idea. This guy's just playing loud music. And then someone have to explain to
Mhm.
him, okay, that belongs here. But if they can just issue out their complaint and then somebody can pull their complaint and know what to look for, and then say, this sounds like it should go over here, or this sounds like it should go over here. And then if something gets kicked out, a flag in the system that says this did not belong here, we need it to go somewhere else.
Yeah.
Interesting, the agent AI thing is an interesting thing in terms of maybe having something that could help initially determine which way it goes. You mentioned four things, Mandy. I know those were on that recording that we
Mhm.
did when we did the interview, but you said for the neighbor to neighbor side, do you have those four things in your top of your mind?
No, I
Okay.
remember they, yeah,
Yeah, I know that they talked
there's
about them,
4
so we'll have to go back.
conflicts.
Yeah,
Um, mm-mm.
okay. The incident report, I think Jared did say he was gonna send you that. Do you have a copy of that you could send to
I
me?
Well, now that I'm thinking of it, he never did. And Megan, remember we followed up with those 2 partners and they wrote back, but they never sent, we didn't set up a Zoom call with them. And so I'm glad that he brought that up because that we didn't get a whole, I have their names, the name of those 2 organizations. So it's substance abuse and mental health, right? And
Right.
so those are the 2 major ones that I really wanted to touch base with. Um, and that there was elderly care, but they said they stopped using that. It was elderly care or case management care. I can't remember it was one or the other, or it was a combination of the 2. They said those
That
it
was
had
a combination. They didn't have that one, and then one they said that they
one was
wanted or
gone.
needed was, the
Financial.
financial.
Yeah.
Yes, and so interestingly enough, speaking of that, I met with it's called it's under Commerce Department, Securities, Arkansas Securities today, and they're going to be one of our financial partners to do financial literacy as part of Neighbor Care 101. So they would be one of the partners that Neighbor Care could use for financial literacy. I did remember that that was important. We have a lot of financial literacy partners, actually. So um, that's something that's
Maybe
Arkansas.
a couple. So the incident report, though, the actual incident report that's used by Jared, and that did he send you a copy of that?
I don't think he did, but you know what? He might have. Let me look and see.
If anything like that you find, if you can just send it my way, then I'll share it with the teams. Because I agree. I mean, Tony, if there is something out there that's
There's a
that
neighbor
first,
support form.
yeah,
She sent the neighbor
that's
Yeah,
support
that's
form.
it.
I don't think Jared sent. No, this is the support form.
Yeah, that was
but
on the support services side. He had a specific incident report that
Mhm.
one of his individuals that would pass it to so they could investigate it and then determine where it needed to go. And that was the other question I had. Is this system intended to connect to certain individuals so that they can determine where it needs to go? I think theirs was property management to support services, unless it was a lease violation or something that could potentially involve the police, like theft. They kept that, I think, in the property management sphere. But almost everything else they passed on: restorative justice, support services, mental health.
Mhm.
I would assume they were doing the financial side, which falls under property management. So that wasn't in it, and it's just, we wanna help you try to get the best
Mhm.
system we can,
I just sent him an email.
and knowing those
Yeah.
how you want it, like, if it's decentralized or if it will have a centralized hub where everything's dumped into and then goes out from there, I think might be helpful, just so we can design a
Yeah.
system that works towards what you want.
And he had said, remember, I think he had said for now, it might not need to be separated out because you're so small, but you'd want to build it out for the future to be separated, right? And so yeah, I agree with you. I just emailed him to ask for the form. We do have the neighbor support form, but you're right, we do not have the incident report on property management side.
okay.
So
Well, if you get both of those would
I'm
be helpful to
I'm
have.
getting that. Yeah.
You mentioned Neighbor Care 101. Is that a training and that you all are going to be providing, or what is that?
So Neighbor Care 101 is basically orientation for neighbors when they move in. And that includes, a number of things, hygiene, financial literacy. It orients them to the property, gives them a tour of the property. How do you get your mail? Where do you get your mail? Who works here? How do where do you find things? So we're working on building that out using what we've learned from Community First and other replicator villages, but also looking at what our partners provide locally and have recommended. And so, and incorporating that. And so, for instance, we did some de-escalation training. But if you've not taught folks coping skills, de-escalation training isn't effective, right? You can't ask them to remember their coping skills if you never taught it to them. And so they need to learn those things in the orientation. So that's part of that. And AFMC is one of our partners who is willing to teach that. And so these are just some of the things that they'll learn the first 6 weeks that they're there. It's called Neighbor Care 101.
Okay.
And our partners will, a collaboration of partners will do that with our care team and myself helping direct the partners in collaboration with our team and the neighbors. And conflict will obviously be a part of that. How do you report conflict? What do you do if there's conflict, right? So it'll be introducing them to the incident report. This is where you'd find the incident report, right? So to your point, Tony, this is where you'd find it. It's one report, but there's 2 types: property management and neighbor care. You click one, it goes here, and we'll figure it out from there, right? It also goes over like home safety. You don't disable the fire alarm. No smoking in your house. Those kind of things.
Yeah.
There's
All right,
very
so
good systems for that. Silent Night was one that I used when I worked security at one place, Caterpillar Incorporated. So yeah, there's systems that can actually link together that will tell you if fire detection system has actually been deactivated.
Okay, good to know.
might be something to make as a suggestion for a resource, Tony. All right, Doc Rice, you've got your hand up.
Yes. Hey, thanks, man. And thanks for coming to
Yes.
class tonight. I watched the Community First video as well and picked up a lot of things about conflicts. But I had a question about the application process.
Mhm.
How are you all screening, that first person or first 5 people that are going to move in together? And are there some dynamics with that? And I just look at it from like a board standpoint. So they say, okay, we need diversity on the board. We need people from different backgrounds, different genders, different walks of life, and so and I think knowing a little bit about the project that eventually you're going to have maybe 300 or 400 residents there. But how are you screening that first person? What are some of the parameters that going to that first person is going to be offered that opportunity, and then the subsequent people. And the second question I had, and you talked about it, I wanted to know if there was going to be some conflict management training with your onboarding. You talked about that neighbor to neighbor care piece, but I'm really just curious about the personalities that you're going to put in this place, and how are you doing psychological tests? Are you doing what are what are some of those some of those variables that people have to the verbal versus the nonverbal. They may be saying one thing but maybe presenting something else, that kind of thing. So I just like your feedback on that.
Yeah. Um, let me start with that. Half of the population that is experiencing that's unsheltered in America, not let's go big here. is chronically unsheltered, and that means on the streets for more than 12 months with a disabling condition. And so Americans don't like those individuals. Let me just, right? We don't, because who is that person, right? That is typically somebody that we see that looks like an able-bodied male, around 50 years old, with a dual diagnosis, right? What's interesting about that person is that more than 50% of those individuals receive a check. And that check right now, because they're disabled, but you don't see their disability, right? More than 50% of those individuals receive a check, around $975 is their check. And so imagine Richard, 56 years old, with schizophrenia and a mild meth use disorder, and he's not been on the street for 12 months. He's been on the street for 12 years, because 12 months is a joke in America. And so that's all he'd have to do to qualify. It ain't hard. And so when I meet with individuals who filled out the application, that's who I'm meeting with. Middle-aged males who have been on the streets for years, decades, with a tremendous amount of trauma, whether it was before or after they became unsheltered. It's hard to know. It depends on if I knew them before or if I'm just meeting them for the first time. As a result of the nature of my work, a lot of them know me or I know them. And so one individual, for example, he said he's been unsheltered for 8 years. My daughter's 13. He's been on the streets for more than 13 years. And so he doesn't know that because he has an intellectual disability. And so that is who we would be serving intentionally, because no one else really wants to serve that population. And that's because that population is difficult to serve. You're right. Personalities clash. There will be conflict. Cops will be called, right? I ran the City's Day Resource Center. I've been held hostage. Gunpoint, and it wasn't by the homeless. It was by the cops. And so it goes that this population is difficult to say the least. But the best intervention and the best practices is permanent supportive housing. Anything short of that for this population is a waste of money. And Americans, we love to waste money on this population because what we want to do is give them soup and socks, not housing, because this is the undeserving poor, right? Not the deserving. Veterans are deserving. Nothing against veterans. My sister's a veteran. She's in there, right? Women and children, deserving. Richard, dual diagnosis. No, right? And so as a result, from 24 to 25, year 24 to 25, in Central Arkansas, the unsheltered, the chronically homeless, increased by 78%. 78, that's an epidemic. Anything else, we'd be like, this is crazy. But Richard's, it's whatever. It's fine. You know what that cost our hospitals, ambulance? It's wild. And so all that to say is going to be a hot mess. There's no way I can test personalities or get it right. It's going to be a hot mess. And so that's why I need y'all to help me with the process. But if they can do 3 things, pay rent, $325, flat fee, less than 30% of their check. And everyone that I've met with receives a check, but they have nowhere to go. And don't get me started on HUD vouchers. Don't even get me started on HUD, right? If they can follow civil law to the best of their ability, okay? And if they can follow community rules, which they will themselves create, then they are a candidate for Providence Park. And that's that. right? And if they lived in Pulaski County for more than 12 months, if they've been on the streets for more than 12 months and they have a disabling condition, then they qualify. I already know their personalities are going to be what it is. And so I can't, there's no good answer to this question other than it is going to be community
Well,
filled with a lot of personalities, but it's going to be a community because housing does not solve homelessness. It never will. But housing plus community does,
Mm.
right? And so housing plus intentional community certainly does. And so when you put the two together, the return on investment is high. So you don't have to want to serve the homeless uh, to reduce the cost that it takes to 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 do it, right? Because if I'm telling you this is the best return on investment, and there's 13 villages in the cities where it is, so like in Austin, the emergency room saved $8 million when that village opened. I mean, that's a no. Okay. So I've worked in the hospitals. I mean, I'm sorry, not doctor, but Father William, April's husband, and I have worked together on difficult cases. A man that was homeless stayed in the hospital for 6 months. He was my first quote patient. Um, and, because they didn't know what to do because he was homeless. I mean, so we spend a lot of time and money on the unsheltered when we have an intervention that we know works. But we got to buy into it as Americans, really. It's hard, but we'll, we'll figure it out.
uh, Mandy, I had one question. I mean, it started out one place, and then as I've heard you listen, and I hope you excuse me if I sound a little crude,
No,
although
I'm good with that.
I'm okay. Um, you're actually taking a model. It's not institutionalization as you would normally depict it back as it was back in the day when JFK's sister got a lobotomy. You're actually trying to take what should have existed when they closed all of the institutions, a community and a place for these individuals to come together. And that actually, in my view, helps guide and direction what we're trying to do because what you're actually going to need, I mean, there are some kinds of populations, as you know, there are some disorders, they should not exist near another disorder as you go forward. You would not want somebody who experiences paranoid schizophrenia to be with somebody who is a psychotic delusional who enjoys in creating scenarios and causing and creating realities around people because you're going to implode. There, one side
Mhm.
is going to enjoy pushing the other is going to get lost in it and lose their mind, and then the stability you're trying to create will unravel. And I mean, I've only got a BA in psychology, but I know that there are
Mhm.
specific disorders you do not want to match with other disorders because you will cause
Yeah,
insanity to occur.
I agree.
But for Doc Rice and them, I think on their side, knowing with the neighbor to neighbor conflict, what your intake process will be. Will you be conducting some kind of baseline psychological examination
Yes.
to understand where these people are? Because if you bring people in and you have no idea where their mental state is, you will head, in my opinion, for catastrophe.
Yeah, so
Because
everyone will get a health assessment through our health clinic, and Divine Mercy is our health partner. And so, yes, they will get a comprehensive health assessment, absolutely, as part of the application process. And so we will know, yes, absolutely. Um, and so, yeah, and we will also, be doing our best with injectables, which is another thing that is lacking in this in the world of mental health and the unsheltered, which is also
injectables,
Injection. So psych meds, we give bags of meds to unsheltered people, and you can't take them into shelters. And so there's a reason that they don't take their meds, right? When we know that they can get 3 months of stability with an injection, and it's not being done because there's nobody to work the case. And so we'll be doing more and more of that because it's best practices for people living unsheltered with, for example, your example, paranoid schizophrenia. So we could have a safer community if we treated people and we knew their diagnosis and gave them meds that were best practices for their diagnosis. And so, yeah, there's going to be a lot of that, but also voluntary, as voluntary as much as we can, right? And so, yes, and I also think that we don't do a great job of like outpatient substance abuse treatment. Those sort of, right. We say we have to go inpatient. I don't think that's best for everybody, especially people who have to leave their things in the streets. And
You're
so,
providing a hybrid model for inpatient, outpatient, where they have their own environment that they can relax and rest, but there is a clinic on site through Children's. I did a little bit of volunteer work working with the NCTR. I'm doing some of their nickel game examinations, so I know the kind of things that Children's Hospital can look at. And it makes a lot more sense because, when I know this is a touchy topic for individuals. Talking about the actual needs of people who are unstable in some aspects is difficult because that's why it's kind of a walled community. That's why it's a protected place. That might be why you're located in the area that you are. And institutionalization gets a very bad vibe because of what was done in the past. This is not that. You want to help these individuals get back on a track to get, I mean, if they have a place that they can walk down to and get their monthly injection, use an agent AI mode that tells you this individual's due for their injections. And it flags and warns and says, okay,
mhm.
individuals due for injections. This person needs to be informed. This person's informed. Was a follow up done? Did the person put the confirmation that the injection was given? AI can then close it down. That will help with a lot of your processing. Sorry, Jeff. You're actually talking about a topic that I have considered and thought about and conceptualized, but nobody's ever gone after because people don't like the terms like institutionalization. They don't like the terms of we're trying to help people by putting them in a safe community where it can be monitored. So my bad, Jeff.
Mhm.
Jeff?
So I just had a couple questions, but it was so interesting to listen from your perspective of just all those years of being in the field and working with the population. And it made me think of that book. I know Dr. April knows it, by Matthew Desmond. It's Poverty by America. And whatever stuck out to me in that book was he talked about how when it comes to political parties, you have Republicans and Democrats, and both will talk about the middle class and advocating for the middle class. And then he goes, so there's truly no flag for the poor. And I was like,
Mhm.
wow. But anyway, that just, hearing, your experience and everything made me think of that line. But anyway, with the questions, and I was really fascinated with the orientation part of it because you mentioned potentially like 6 weeks worth of training for them or like orientation for them through the Neighbor 101. And I wanted to know a little bit more about like the frequency because I think you were mentioning that was still in the process of being planned out. So I kind of was more interested frequency of weeks and like what kind of ideas are out there for how many times a day or what kind of meetings exactly. And then I also was curious of just throwing out an idea of how do you feel about public forum? I think in the interview, if I remember correctly, it's been a while. There was a talk about the community coming together every so often and just having a discussion of what can be better, right? So I was just trying to see like what is your perspective of what that would be like at Providence Park too.
Yeah, I'll start there. My perspective is that criticism from the people that live there is welcome. right? So I don't ever want to meet a perceived need, right? Middle class Americans do this all the time for people living in poverty, right? We do this all the time. I no, you need to meet the real need, and the only way to meet the real need is to listen to people in need, right? And do what they say. If you don't do what they say, then you're meeting your own need. And so yeah, we'll have town halls and they're going to be wild. And that's okay, right? That's it. That is it. Is their community. So I need to know, like for instance, if this incident report sucks and 90% of the people that live there say it sucks, then it sucks. If 50% of the people there say it sucks, it sucks. If we think it doesn't suck, we don't live there, right? I mean, if they say it sucks, it sucks. That's it, right? If they say hygiene 101 sucks, then hygiene 101 probably sucks and we need to revamp it, right? I remember at Jericho Way, all of these well-meaning middle class men had said, we want to do financial literacy. We want to do financial literacy. And I was a new director and I thought, I don't know. I don't know. So I always ask the people that I served, typically during lunch, what do you guys think about this? They were like, hell no. Like, what are they going to do? Like, what are we going to, what, they're going to teach us how to manage $2 or manage
I
no money
barely
at
knew
all?
what I had for breakfast. What do you
Right.
want here?
They were like, no. And I was like, out of frustration, I was like, well, then what do you want? Like, what do you want then? And they were like, a legitimate hustle? What about that? What about a legit hustle? One that keeps us out of freaking jail. What about that? And I was like, okay, let me work on it. So we created an art program and yeah, we I we had art shows at churches and all over the place downtown and they sold out and I paid them the money directly. Cash money directly in hand, cash money, and they could spend it all. I didn't say don't buy cigarettes, don't buy alcohol, don't buy a prostitute. They could buy whatever they wanted to. It was a legitimate hustle, and that was it. That's what we did. And so,
I'm gonna tell you, I was actually talking with Coho over there with Tara and them, and they had an individual that was going through a similar process, and I did a roundtable with them, and they were talking about, hey, this guy gambles, and it's
yeah,
like we got to help you pay your bills first, and then what you do beyond that point with your money is what you do. We'll try to get you in gambling, anonymous, and all of that, but y'all are gonna the financial side as having case managers cover finances is going to be probably the most critical part for y'all. You need people who their
if
whole
and
job is to make sure bills are paid.
if they want it, yeah, if they want it. And so it's been interesting. I've met with the majority of people who fill out the application, and many of them do want their rent drafted and they do want assistance with the remainder of their finances. However, these are people that have referred themselves to Providence Park,
Mm.
right? I have also worked with individuals who were highly artistic. I mean, sold thousands of dollars of art, thousands of dollars of art, also owed thousands of dollars to drug dealers and thousands of dollars to HUD and did not pay it. And people
I hope
came to
y'all have
Jericho Way,
on-site security. I'm just
and people
saying,
came
y'all
to
are gonna
Jericho
need
Way
on-site.
looking for them. That is not what they spent their money on, right? And that is right. Self-determination won the day. I did not manage them. I was not their manager. That Jericho Way is not a program. It is a Cities Day Resource Center, and they were able to do what they wanted to do with that money. It was a legitimate hustle. They made money. They paid a small percentage for the canvases and the supplies, and that is it. And so that was that. But yeah, so to your point, Jeff, yes, they will have a say because there is a ton of autonomy. It is a safe neighborhood where they will have a say in their neighborhood. We will have the equivalent of a city council as well, where they will say how they want their wards essentially run. They do that really well in Austin. And this is how you make sure that the community is for them and not for people who don't live there, right? Um, and I think the other part of your question, remind me the first part of your question,
Yeah.
Jeff.
And just a little side note there, the city council thing is really cool idea. 'Cause, well, I'm doing my master's in public administration here as well with and then I'm part of the ICMA chapter, the international, it's like, oh, I feel bad for miss saying the name, International
Community
City Council
managers,
Graduates.
we're talking about community managers, yeah.
Yes, yes. And I'm the treasurer apparently now, so there's that. But
Congrats.
anywho, I think that's really cool. I've been taking a lot of classes about city government and like that idea and like having them practice that, see that, getting
Mhm.
involved. I mean, that almost creates their own HOA version there. It also
Exactly.
gets them into civic engagements. Like that just does so much in general. Really cool to have a city council. But my other part of the question was the 6 weeks of the training, like the
Oh, yeah.
frequency of the
Mhm.
orientation, like how frequently, and then exactly what type of, because we talked about the hygiene, kind of like 101, potentially, probably not, really, probably not the financial literacy, but,
Well, it'll
you
be
know,
it'll
and what
depend on
other
what they
things?
want. Some of it'll be standard, but not all. And so, yeah, yeah, so it'll complement sort of systems in place. So like to Tony's point, if there are four providers under neighbor care, substance abuse, conflict, let's just say four neighbors, then we would introduce them to those neighbors on, let's say, day two of orientation. Right. So this is how that would go. This is the incident report. This is the director of neighbor care. And if you had an issue with substance abuse, this would be the partner that you would be introduced to. And that's how that would go. And so that it would just be an orientation of sort of this is how it would go, the flow of it. And so we're still working through that. We do not have a director of neighbor care, but that will be one of our next hires, which is near and dear to my heart, as you can imagine. It's my job to make sure that that person has the partners in place to create their wish list of what neighbor care will look like. And like I said, we have a lot to pull from, but what can someone, to Tony's point, who just got there and might not be on an injection and might have just started their meds, what can they handle, but realistically, right? And so we want to be realistic about what can they do the first 6 weeks. And so we're trying to weigh that as a staff right now. And so we're sort of waiting through that. And that's sort of a terrible answer to your question, but it's a delicate one because to Dr. Doc Rice, I think that's what they've been calling you, point, this group is going to be tough and also coming in sort of traumatized from all the things, right? And some of them just, I know I've housed a lot of people in the years of doing this work, and many of them just want to sleep. And a lot of them don't sleep in a bed for months. They sleep under a bed or they sleep on their porch. And they might not be able to do orientation immediately. It might take a while before they can start. And so I don't know when they'll start. I don't know when the 6 weeks will end.
Andy,
I don't
get
know
them
when their
back to
rotation will be.
hygiene, eating,
Hmm.
just get them back into routines. I mean, you gotta take
Yeah,
it back. What everything we measure for competency. Can you eat, do you feed yourself? Do you take care, I mean, just go to straight basics if that's what you gotta start them at. I think if you
sure.
start that low, you will build them into better, get them back into routines, get them back to understanding this is how I'm supposed to operate. These are the
Yeah.
obligations that I have, and just go
And
slowly.
and we will when they're ready. I think that just from my experience, you build rapport with people who have lived, unsheltered for so long. And you can break rapport with them quickly if you push them into this thing, right? And so you just have to be, it's a delicate, it's a delicate time. And so we're going to take it slow. And so Jeff, just to answer your question, the 6 weeks might not start the day they show up. It might start 3 weeks after they show up because they slept for 3 weeks. We don't know, you know, and it might be different for everyone. It will be a loving, supporting, caring environment. And it will start when they're ready. But it will start, to Tony's point. Yes, they will, learn where they get their mail,
Yeah.
right? And they will learn where, my office is, right? They'll learn all those things. It'll be baby steps, and but in a way that they can, it's not forced, when they're ready. And so that's what permanent supportive housing is. It's voluntary. We do it with them. So yeah.
Mandy, you mentioned, and there's a question in the chat about this, but I want to ask one
Oh.
opening question for this. You mentioned that they will create the community rules themselves. And so I'd like to hear a little bit more about what you think that process is going to be. And then Doc Rice is there a community rule violation that would cause a resident to be removed?
Oh, absolutely. Yeah, so we there is some structure around some of the community rules right now. But yeah, they'll create some of the community rules. So maybe I'm trying to think of an example. So maybe quiet time is from, let's say, 10 to 6, so 10 p.m. to 6. And I think that in Austin they changed it to 9 to 6. The community, so like, to Jeff's point, so like the ward members, they changed it to 9 to 6 because some of the folks were working and they thought 10 was too late. And so yeah, the standard, like the staff set that just as a standard, but then the community, the HOA came together and said 10 was too late. They changed it to 9, and that was the rule. Does that kind of make sense? So we might set some standards, that we think, but it's up to them if they wanted to change it. Another one is that they were having, open mic night where they do karaoke, and it was getting too loud and too late. And so, one of the ward members had said it was just too crazy, and they wanted it to end at 8:30 instead of 9 because it was breaking. So they thought that karaoke could go past 9 because it was karaoke and it was open mic night. So they were breaking the noise ordinance because it was like a calendared event. And the ward was like, no, that counts as a noise ordinance. And so they
Gotta
moved
let people have a little fun, though. I
they
mean, one
moved it
night
to
a month.
8:30.
Like,
I
yeah,
mean,
one
listen,
night a month.
the
One night a
community
Hey.
said no. So
Mandy, do you, there was a question, do you have any idea of what those rules are going to be, or Community First or some of the other, the replicator villages have a list of
I'm
rules?
trying to think of some of them off the top of my head. Like, cigarette butts have to be picked up. There's different, dog waste. I mean, some of these things, and then the community can, again, we kind of set some of the ground rules, and the community can take it from there. Trespassing by people who might have been evicted. There's all sorts of stuff. But yeah, people absolutely can be evicted. Doc Rice, that happens. I think Community First had 12 evictions last year. It is not our goal, right? We definitely want to keep people. That's the whole point. But evictions happen. And so if you break civil law, we will absolutely try to work with you. But if it's a continued issue, that's grounds for eviction. If not paying rent is a continued issue, we work with you. Let's say, Tony, to your point, we do financial management. This is a continued issue. You got to go, right? Because everybody else is paying rent. Like, everybody's paying rent. The Mitchell's paying rent. Rent's not everybody pays because it's dignity, right? Everybody's got skin in the game here.
It's trauma informed lens. It's
Right.
accountability
So-
and responsibility is
Right.
important to that, and that's on the individual who has trauma.
Right. So we would work with them, but that's so yeah, so that would be grounds for eviction. let's say that, I don't know, I'm trying to think of some of the things at Community First, yeah, violence, weapons, civil, so, I mean, civil law, you break civil law, that there's things that happen. I don't have on rose-colored glasses. There's one, I think there's a big, again, I ran the city's day center, um, seen a lot, but a lot of replicator villages all actually hire third-party security systems, third-party security, and I think that that has really not served them well in my experience. Now, maybe there are partners that have it has. I've not seen that
Mm.
look
It
look
really
good.
depends on who you get, and there are not security companies tailored to this kind of trauma-informed lens. You would need I would recommend veterans. I'd work with the VA because they
Mhm.
understand trauma. They understand approaching situations, but you have to check them out as well to make sure that they're on an even keel. But you don't want jackboots. You need guys in there who can identify problems, know how to stay back and let the missionals handle things, let the staff handle things, and only intercede if absolutely necessary. Now, as far as security setup, cameras, badge key in, key out, that's
Yeah,
all easy. It's your
yeah,
on-site personnel.
we'll have a gate. It's gated one way in, one way out. There'll be 9,000 cameras. Genesis Datacom is our partner there. The sheriff's department is our major partner. We will have off-duty officers who are trauma informed and receive additional training. Um, and so I did not want, after I've been to Austin several times. I I love presentations, but I like to wait till the sun goes down and walk around, right? And that's when you see the drug dealers coming on site because the gate's up because there's nobody sitting in the gate because the third party security company isn't there, right? And nobody's running the license plate reader, right? And they're like, we don't know why
Oh,
we
yeah.
have a drug problem. You don't? You don't know why?
Yeah,
I know
yeah.
why, right?
I know.
And so, um, one benefit we have had is really not being the first, right? Being the 13th. So we've been able to see all of the good and the bad of the replicator villages and make different decisions. And we won't get them all right. But when it comes to security, I do not have on rose-colored glasses, but I do not know everything either, right? And so, to your point, Tony, yes, security is a big issue, and so, yes, there can be major violations with security. So, for example, your guest, we will run background checks on your guest, as well. And so, um, that let's say that you were to do something with, there can be all sorts of things, grounds for evictions, as you can imagine. And
Yeah.
so yes, yes, conflict everywhere, April.
They're
ChatGPT,
actually yeah.
ChatGPT just provided me a list of possible rules. You might look at in the chat.
Yeah.
Anyway,
Totally
they're all
cheating, April. You're
no,
totally
no, no. It's
cheating.
community Friday. It's
Yeah, pay
about
on rent. Yeah,
yeah.
exactly. Yes, yes, yes. All this is, those are the top three, really, right? And so, yeah, follow community rules. Yeah. Yeah, and the pets. So there's a lot of, let me say that we're so nobody takes pets. I have done a lot of funerals as a result of working with the unsheltered, and um we will have a tiny chapel, and we could talk offline about that if anybody's interested. I've done a lot around death and dying. It was not what I ever intended to do as a social worker, but if I ever left this field, I would want to go into death and dying at this point in my life, because so many people that I've worked with will never receive dignity in life, but you can provide it in death. Right. And it's almost easier to provide dignity in death than it is in life for people living unsheltered in America, which is the sad truth about us. Um, but it has been my honor to be able to provide that. And as a result of that, what I have learned is that at Community First, we can provide that promise by providing a cremation service through Smith Funeral Home, which is our partner in that. Proud of that partnership. And they will cremate those individuals if they wish. That's part of the application process, Doc Rice, if they wanted to do that. And that is our promise to them that their name would go on the memorial wall. Right now, if you die, you go to a pauper's grave. If you go through a hospital, if you go through Pulaski County, you might or you might not. And so all that to say, that is something that we do too. And I don't know that I mentioned that. I don't know if that was on anything that we.
I would I tell you, man, I would recommend it, even though it might be a placebo for those of us who know that, but also having legal, paralegal, or legal staff to, this
Oh,
individual
yeah.
wants their stuff to go to someone else,
Hmm.
somebody that makes them feel official,
Hmm.
because a lot of people just want the validation.
Yeah.
And if they can be made to feel official that their things will go where they want it to go, it might be a small thing, but I think it would be
I,
helpful.
I know on the animals. So nobody will allow anybody that's living on the streets inside with their pet. And so a lot of the funerals that I have done is a result of people dying on the streets because they died with their animal, right? So we will take animals as well. And so there's a to that point, I'm sorry I got off on death and dying, but that causes a lot of deaths in Pulaski County, that no one will take animals. And so pet policies. Oh boy. Oh boy. If you go online and look at our application, I mean, it just
Can they
wears
get
me
a,
out.
okay, so the application, can they get online and see it?
Yeah, y'all can get online and look at the application. You won't be able to go past the first page unless you fill it out. So please don't do that. But you can look at the preview of the application there. It says apply for home, and everything you see there would be what you would look at in the application. And so yeah, you can see a lot of it. It'll go through what you would see there, and it goes over the pets. Um, but yes, a ton of pet policies. And pets are a huge issue at Community First. As you can imagine, leash laws apply, right? Breeds and all this kind of stuff. So that's another huge issue for uh, oh,
Would that fall under neighbor to
for
neighbor or property management?
property management.
Yeah,
Yeah, and they get
both.
a ton of issues around pets. So,
I
um,
typed into the chat, dog trainers bringing out. I mean, there are plenty of
yeah,
shelters like mine right up the
we
street.
have a
Teach people how
ton
to
of.
have.
So, as you know, Americans love animals. You can hear Sarah McLachlan playing in the background right now. We will save a dog before we will save a human, honey. So, as you know, the director of neighborhood partnerships, I have all of the animal partners lined up. Don't you worry, your precious heart, Tony. We will have dog
My
trainers.
mom has Shih Tzus, and we've got too many. So
I
if you need a
mean,
couple
brand
little
new
Shih Tzu
dog
Malteses,
bags,
I got.
dog leashes, dog food. Dog, everything you can imagine. Yes. So, and the Animal Village, I met with a woman in Southwest Little Rock who gets $1,100. She is 69 years old. She lives in hotels. She cannot afford anywhere. Um, HUD vouchers, again, don't get me started. Get my pressure up this late at night. And when the money runs out, she stays in her storage unit. She has always had an animal. She does not have an animal right now. And Dr. Rice, she will likely be a resident at Providence Park. She's a perfect candidate. Okay. And she said, would I be able to get a dog when I moved in? And the answer is yes. So you don't have to come with a dog. You'll be able to adopt a dog if you'd like, because the Paws to Prison wants to work with us. Village wants to work with us because you can adopt a dog through Animal Village, and Animal Village will help you train the dog and work with the dog, right? So,
Emotional support
yes,
animals. There you
so
go.
many dog people don't, yep. And she just cried because she'll finally be able to have a little dog again and have the support that she needs to have that dog too. So, yes, I know. I know. So very, very good. Um, good stuff, and I can't wait to move her in. And I'm her case manager, by the way, because she's not connected to any provider.
Mm.
interestingly enough. So she's just out there on her own, very lonely. And so a dog will be good for her mental health as well. Hmm.
Well, I told Mandy she would only be here for an hour, and we've kept her a little bit longer than that. But any last minute questions that you would like to have asked?
I will, Tony, I did ask Jared for um,
The
that incident
incident form?
report, and I will follow back up with those 3 or 4 providers, April, because we were supposed to meet with them, and I'm glad that we.
Yeah, so the detailed list of partners is the
Yeah.
other thing that
Hmm.
to request.
And if there's anything else, just let me know. And I love the video. If you don't mind sending it to me, that's cute. So I
Yeah,
really
I'll do
appreciate
that.
y'all. This is
Mandy, I don't want them to bother you, but would you
I don't
mind them
mind.
contacting you directly if they have a question?
No, not at all.
Then would you
Um,
mind putting your email into the chat?
yeah. Sorry I didn't get in chat and chat back.
I think we dealt with all the things that came up though. Kat, did you have any questions? Because you were letting everybody else ask.
No, I'm just like a systematic person. So I had Tony ask all the questions so I could take notes over here um for the group. So we're working on our team thing here. So I'm doing my little outline and everything. So sorry if I'm so quiet. We've got 2 people with 2 different strengths, so we're uh splitting everything
Yes,
up in a
yes. I
group
mean, it
manner.
wasn't like planned, but I'll ask a lot of good questions.
Okay,
And
well, you
listen,
guys,
I also, if you want to come out for a tour, feel free. Uh, like the I liked that the video said this is more than, an assignment. It really is. It's a gym of a project, and it's also a health project. Like, it's a small city, so
yeah.
I don't have all the answers, and everything that we think we know will probably change. So, um, but I know that it's needed, and I really am thankful for you all's partnership in this work. It's vital, right? Like, I need you all to think with me to challenge um, the system that doesn't really exist, right? And then to help me create something, and then challenge that, right? So thank you, April, and to all of you.
Mandy, I had just one final thing, and when I was with Coho,
And
they
Coho, do you know
said,
what Coho is, Mandy?
oh, City of Hope Outreach. Tara Ward was the Chief Operations Officer. That's Tara, Tara, and then Ward, Ward.
How do I know?
Um, And one thing that she had hit upon was the lack of a centralized hub for all of the different micro home communities to communicate through. And yours would facilitate an essential function because they get a lot of individuals who don't qualify for their homes who would probably qualify for yours. I know one doesn't exist, and even though that goes outside the scope of what kind of our assignment is, uh, pulling the communities together to work on that and pull resources because you're not going to solve this problem
No.
scattershot.
So we will be a replicator village. So we will be the 13th in the US, and we coordinate with the other 12 directors. And so yes, when we are functioning, other city, like the city of Searcy was just at our site. The city of Russellville came. Um, Cities are welcome to come, but eventually cities will be able to stay at Providence Park, and we will be a replicator village teaching them how to replicate what we have created, because we go to community first and we learn. We That's how we learn. We go to their replicator team. So Jared is part of their 3-day replicator um, uh, program, right? And so we will do that as well. It'll take us time, but we will do that. So yeah, we want to move in that direction. Um, but
Yeah, because
yes,
I think this was about the specific cities. I know they're Conway area, but they just within the different or differentiating organizations, It was one of those things that they had brought up, something they didn't have. And I'm a nerd, so I suggested like a Babylon 5 setup where y'all have all
Mm.
one place where all the absolute people who represent each organization come together and say, I can take that person because they fit our model, or this
Oh, that's
person might
yeah.
fit your
Oh,
model.
yeah.
And
So
getting the
that
different homeless organizations together will create a stronger mesh, and that's what I'm getting at. The
that
cities are great, but you need even those organizations coming together.
that's called coordinated entry, and that is something that Central Arkansas does not have. You should contact your city leaders, Tony, and you should
Well, they won't listen to me. But
you should
anyway,
encourage them to do that because there's a huge barrier to the unsheltered population. But yes, you're right. We should do that. We do not do that. That would be super if we did. But that's a huge missing piece, and why we had a 78% increase in the unsheltered as a result of the lack of coordinated entry. Hmm. And Conway doesn't have coordinated entry either. Yeah.
Interesting. Well, thank you so much, Mandy, for
Yeah.
taking the time. I would suggest that not everybody from all the teams email her, that maybe they go through one person to do the email, like kind of like Tony, you were asking questions for Kat tonight. So you all may suggest that to so that you have like maybe 4 questions you want to ask Mandy, but one person asks them and then reports back to the team. So just so that she doesn't feel overwhelmed. So thank you so much, Mandy. We'll be back in touch if we need additional information.
Yeah.
So
Thank y'all so much.
yeah, appreciate all you do.
All right. Bye-bye.
Take care. All right. Well, we have our work cut out for us. So I wanted to show you a couple of things that I had developed in terms of kind of the overview of the final project assignment. I really have, felt like that this final project it's so big that I want it to somehow break it down. And that's the reason why I did the AI thing. I wasn't initially planning on doing the video, but when I realized that, somebody else could explain it even better than I could potentially, and I knew we might not have much time tonight, that's why I did it. So I'm going to share with you all, and I'll show you where it is in the Blackboard, because I put it kind of in a front and center place, where you can get the video that I showed, and there's also an audio version of this as well. That it created, and so you might hopefully the people will watch this and as well. So I just decided to put the final project overview here right front and center under the syllabus, and I'm going to be trying to put a whole bunch of links within it whenever we put other things in. So I'm going to open this up and we're going to go through it, because I want to see if you have questions. I want to hear about it, if you've actually been able to meet with your group or not. Let me blow this up a little bit bigger so you can see it better on your screen. So the video description of the project, which also has the individual component paper, which I haven't officially assigned description of it in that last 4.5, it's a 7.5 minute video. It has it in the last 3 minutes. You can watch that whole video here. And then there's like a 10 to 12 minute, maybe even be 15 minute, like a podcast version description of the assignment as well, where 2 people are talking to each other about the assignment. So that might be good for you to just kind of go back to remind yourself, what is exactly that we're doing? Just so that you know, I am citing my source. This was a Google Notebook LM that actually created this. I also just now put Mandy's contact information directly there so that you'll have that there to have it. So overall, big picture, the team focus, how your grade is structured. I've already gone through that. But the executive summary is going to be probably at the front end of your group project. We'll talk a little bit more about that, but that'll be the very last thing that you'll do. So we're not going to talk about that tonight. But this how-to manual is something that actually is going to be, there's going to be a draft of that due here coming up. So I'm going to talk about what I want in that draft, and that'll be a draft that you do together as a group. And then there'll also be a draft of the group resource guide that's coming up here. So I think the group resource guide comes first in terms of the timeline, but we'll go through that here in a minute. So this describes all the different parts of that. And then your individual contributions are going to be the peer evaluation, your individual analysis paper, which we'll talk about. So here are some upcoming dates. These are all of the dates of when things are due. The group, and this is all on your syllabus as well. But the group, and I'm going to talk about these two first parts tonight and the rest of our time. The group resource guide, November 16th. The systems and process guide, November 23rd. Those are drafts. And the reason why I want them drafts is, and they're not worth any points, I want to make sure you're on the right track. And if you're not, I want to be able to kind of move the ship a little bit. Or if you're having trouble with getting some of your people in your groups to actually be doing any work, it's good for me to know that up front before Thanksgiving, when these other things are due after Thanksgiving. So you can kind of see when the other things are. I also included here your link to where you can be putting things. This came directly from your notes from about 2 or 3 weeks ago with what the scope was, who your group members are. This is your folder that you can go to put specific things that you want to be putting that everybody can see. And again, the neighbor to neighbor group as well. And then what I just copied into the chat, or tried to, from ChatGPT, a summary of the main community rules and covenants. And as we get additional things, like when she ends up, if she gives me the incident reports, then I'll start putting things at the bottom of this that are links. And I'll let you all know also when I get those things in, so that you'll be able to have them. But this is kind of just the one place shop. You can certainly go and take a look at the assignment. You know, when you go into the assignments here, it goes into a lot of detail about the wherever it is, the final project. As you go here, you'll see the final project paper, your group evaluation. I don't think I've got the individual paper in here yet. So no, here it is. It's the final project, but the group evaluation. So, oh, here's the, but where is the groups? Okay, so I don't have everything yet put in here, the 12/5 that's due yet. So I've got to add that in as I'm building this kind of as we go. So in the notes for tonight, so weekly materials, we're in week 12. So the week 12 notes, and I'm sorry, we don't have time to go over the stuff that you read from last week or tonight, because I want to make sure everybody's on the same page here. But you all wrote some good things in your journal. So I know that you, in your discussion post, you were also doing a good job talking about the AI is a third side, by the way. I loved that assignment. I don't know if you felt my love in my responses back to your
I
deal.
felt it. It was good.
I just thought that turned out even better than I could have expected with the tutoring, coaching that it was providing you. So, and the way you guys wrote about it was great. I haven't read the discussion posts, all of them yet, unless people had turned them in as of yesterday. I did get to some of those, but this article reminded me a lot of what you all were talking about, the whole rehearsal notion. So I just want to say you all did, for the most part, across the board, the AI as a third side work assignment was done really well. Tonight, we might talk a little bit about this, but I'm going to go specifically into more detail on this, what I'm wanting for your draft. So I'm going to spend the rest of our time, I think, going over the next two group assignments. The whole list of things that's due is the overview of the final project. So that also links out to what I just showed you. Okay. So your resource guide is, and I did, Lindsay emailed me about this, and I think I mentioned it in one of the videos too. Originally, when I was thinking about this resource guide and annotated bibliography, I was really thinking about, okay, these would be academic sources. But the more I've thought about it, the more I realized that there might be other models, other examples, other things that you have found out there that are website based that are not academic sources. And so I'm not looking at a certain percentage of these have got to be academic articles. I want things that you think in your group would be useful resources for the Providence Park people to go to take a look at. Now, they might be an article like that rehearsal article. Okay, they might be an article like that, but I'm not asking you to look just for academic things. Okay, so this is actually, I think the way the video described it is this is the why behind your what. You're going to give them a systems guide. Well, how did you get the ideas for that systems guide? It may have come from, I mean, you all asked some fantastic questions tonight of Mandy, and you have your own experiences, whether it be from your MPA program or your own personal life experiences. You have some great experiences, but you don't need to just rely on your own experiences. You need to find some things to back up your ideas. And so it's those things that back up your ideas. Where did you get your ideas from that you're going to be also including in this group resource guide? So it's essentially an annotated bibliography that shows the research and evidence base behind your design choices. So that's why I don't think it necessarily has to be just academic resources. Tony, you raise your hand and I'll go back to sharing.
Yeah, this is the point I think, and Kat, jump in on me if I miss it, but we're so I get where you're looking at that we can look into it, but it almost seems that these sources are not, because if we're developing a system and a process for document flow, for instance, I don't know how we'd source that. I mean, I'll do my best to research and look at what models might prove to be right or things like that. But if the sources are actually also good things that we think could help in the thinking of Providence Park as they approach, because that actual, like, there was nothing in their original website when we did the stakeholders that they're pulling to a different type of model for helping a different type of population. That's why I wanted to get clarification
Yeah.
there on the institutionalization. I know it's a bad word, but it's a word that everybody in academia understands. And I just, if we find something that just says, hey, maybe this might be helpful, but it doesn't necessarily relate to our systems and processes,
If you
is that
think
acceptable?
if you think it's helpful for understanding the context of the people that they're talking with or you working with, I think it's fine to include that. When you write your short, and I'm not making these long annotations, these are 2 to 3 sentence annotations. So when you write your 2 to 3 sentence annotation, you're going to have to be very clear as to why you picked that article and how it relates to Providence Park and or your plan.
For instance, as I had spoke with Mandy about the not mixing certain psychological disorders, although that falls outside of property management.
Yeah, we wouldn't
I
include that.
yeah,
I
we
would
wouldn't include that, but
That's
that might
not
be a
that's
I
not for
wouldn't
property
say you
management.
probably would. I would not say that I
frame of reference for me.
it's a
That's
frame
all.
of reference for you, but if it doesn't relate to your work in property management, I would not include it.
I think, Tony, what would relate to our work was something that Mandy brought up with pets. So if you go to like some apartment sites have their whole lease on their website.
Yes.
So if you are able to get that apartment leased and pull regulations for Arkansas, that might be helpful as an example for us because I'm pretty sure they've run plenty in places. But if they have questions on pets and policies in Arkansas law, then they can say, oh, well, you know what? I have this great apartment leasing guide to go to look at. So those are some of the non-academic sources that I think Dr. Cece is talking about
Yes.
that we can use because that would be helpful. Whereas you're talking about the different mixing of places, the other team could go to a maybe a different facility, maybe talk to somebody on here that works in mental health and how they do
State
an intake.
hospital's a good place.
Yeah, form with that. But with us, I think what Dr. Cece's trying to say with this one is it relates to property management. If people do maintenance contracts, if somebody works for Compass, which does janitorial for a lot of hospitals and universities, and they pull out the weekly cleaning guide or things in regards to maintenance and stuff like that, that would be helpful for Providence Park because yes, people are living there, but it's still like an apartment complex where you have to take a look at how it's
Garbage
ran.
pickup. Garbage pickup when the
Yeah.
when the
Right.
garbage company's coming out to do a pickup.
Right, and
Yeah.
those are some of the things that she's referencing, I think, when she's saying we can use non-academic sources, because an academic source isn't going to give you how to create circumstances in a neighborhood for people who own pets.
Yeah, yeah. Good, thank you, Kat, that you explained it even better than I did. So Jeff, you have your hand up.
It just it started to kind of click with me, and it reminded me of whenever I was a social work intern with Family Promise of Plaza County, they're a small nonprofit for people, for families, large families or individuals with children that are homeless. They had them in apartment style units, but as an intern there, it was very small. So what I ended up doing was very similar, where I was building a resource guide for the social workers who are future social workers who are answering the phones or working with clients and saying, oh, well, as I'm talking with my client, they're battling homelessness, but they need hygiene products. Where are they going to get that resource for them to pull out and bring to them? So like that phone book, that directory, resource directory is more of what it is a bonus to what we're already doing, but also providing evidence in there saying like, oh, wow, that's an interesting concept to put in. I wonder what other information they have about this and where they got this from. What else can I help, understand? Because we could write, about some of these topics in the possible book, but if we reference it and they read it themselves, they might see it in a different way than how we're saying it.
And I'm suggesting here that we're talking about 3 sources per team member. So, and it, you may end up having a lot of sources that you end up using. You should list all of your sources, but in terms of the annotations itself, I only need the annotations done for just 3 sources per member. So let me talk a little bit about, and thank you for that clarification too. So let me talk a little bit about what those annotations look like, because originally I was going to have you write a lot more, and then I'm like, oh, no, 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 you have enough to do. So your group resource guide is going to have, it's going to be one integrated document. So everybody's entries, shareable Google Doc, is going to be, you should indicate whose source it is, so I can tell if there are 3 sources per person. Okay, you can put their source, their name afterwards, beforehand, I don't care the formatting. At least 3 sources per team member. You should have the sources in as good of APA 7th edition format, although this is a draft, so it doesn't have to be perfect. And then 2 to 3 sentence annotation for each source that explains in your own words what the article's main focus or findings or resource actually is, and then how it connects to your team's conflict area, proposed system design, to help Providence Park. And then this is an example. Not that you would use your book, but I was like, okay, I'll just find one that's easy. So here's 2 sentences. The textbook provides frameworks for analyzing conflict patterns and communication strategies, supports our team's approach to mapping conflict escalation cycles and developing trauma-informed intervention processes. There may literally be some conflict things that you all pick as your resources, right? It doesn't necessarily have to be just a lease agreement, pet agreement, or a hygiene, how to help unsheltered with hygiene. It doesn't have to be necessarily all about unsheltered. It could be about conflict resources too. Okay, so keep that in mind as well. So any questions? That's due not this coming weekend, because this coming weekend, if you look at what's due, you have your last work-based plan entry. 5th one, yay. Okay, so that's what's due this weekend, along with meeting with your group and putting your minutes of your group meeting or summary of it. The easiest thing to do is make your Google, Zoom, whatever you use, I would say Zoom, have it do AI for you. See if you can figure that out.
I was gonna say, I don't know. Kat's the one who's wizarding on that side. I don't know.
So we had the AI companion did do a breakdown of what was discussed
Yeah,
and put
Okay,
that
great.
in the
and
document.
I
Would
am
that qualify?
fine with that.
Okay,
Yes,
perfect, because
works.
I couldn't upload the video because, yeah, we know all about my
Yeah.
internet problems. I won't go into that, but,
Yeah, so I am fine with that. So that's, and so as a group this week, you ought to be identifying your relevant sources for the resource guide and then brainstorming the systems process guide elements if you haven't already done that, okay? So that's what's due this week, but this is due the following week, okay? And then we have the Sunday right before Thanksgiving, okay? You can turn it in before that if you want, is the systems and process guide draft. And this really, I mean, it is like the video said, and of course it just took exactly, it's the heart of your team's project. So what you're going to include here, eventually is going to be a 3 to 5 single space pages, okay, with all your sources cited. But for the sake of the draft used for instructor feedback, you can outline those points. It doesn't have to be a narrative yet, just to get feedback from me, okay? So the draft doesn't have to be in full draft 3 to 5. And I don't even know if this 3 to 5 single space pages is going to work. It may end up being longer than that. I really seriously never assigned this project before. So I don't
So
know.
basically, our draft to be an outline of what we've got, just the bare nuts and bolts, and then the 3 to 5 single space pages. It can go longer if it needs to.
That's exactly right. But what you turn in for what on the 23rd is just this outline. Unless somebody wants to turn the outline into a narrative, and that's fine, and first draft of a narrative. But these particular things, you do not have to do all of them. They are ideas for what you can include. Hear me say that again. They're ideas for what you can include. They're prompts. You do not have to respond to all of the prompts. Okay? Saying for all of these, this is true. Okay? They're just prompts. Okay? So there's 4 of them there. We'll talk about them next week to see if you have any questions about them, but I see some questions already. So Jeff.
Yeah, and sorry if you did already answer this one, but just to clarify, do you want each of the group members to turn in the same assignment, or do you just want one person to turn it in for everybody?
One person should turn it in for everybody. Hypothetically, if Blackboard works the way I think it should, that should work. So someone, I don't care, it does not need to be you 4, because you're not the leaders of the group. Remember, we determined that 2 weeks ago. But someone from your group needs to be the one responsible by turning it in by 11:59 on the 16th and the 23rd. Okay. And it's just the link, shareable Google Doc link. And probably it's going to be in the folder, just like your minutes will be. Okay. So everything that you're creating ought to go in that folder. I would say even resources that people are finding, if they are like articles and other things, could go in that folder. So, I mean, you could create folders within folders if you need to. Cat.
So the Army and me has already broken down everything, and we had a meeting and I gave everybody their task and their job. So I guess I don't want to be the leader, but it's already coming out because I have a major medical surgery scheduled at the end of the month during Thanksgiving. So I want to make sure that I'm not supposed to be stressed out that week. So I told everyone I want to make sure we're all doing our part so not only I can rest, but everybody can enjoy Thanksgiving. But having said that, TMI, I think we were able to understand the resource guide pretty well because you explained it, but I think our confusion in trying to understand what the systems guide is about has been a little more like we discussed it, but it's a little bit more confusing on how we want to do that. So is it possible we could kind of role play an example right now of one so that I can put it in notes, and that way that'll help us break down our tasks and everything so that we could get it completed efficiently? Because when we were in our first meeting, we were just kind of like, oh, I don't know. And it ended up being a big question. And I know I am visual and a lot of other people are visual, so this might help.
Okay, so let's do that. If you don't mind, I'm going to pull it up share
Yeah.
the screen, and then let's just talk through what the kind of things you would put into it. Okay?
Perfect.
And if that's okay, you'll use your group since you've asked for that. So what would you put in the conflict landscape? At this
So here's my question when taking a look at it. So I know you provided us an example of conflicts that you took out of AI, and we've asked our group, even though they've been assigned a resource area with some of those conflicts, to go through more. You only have 3 resources, but jot down some more conflicts under that area. So if I say I assigned let's say the maintenance area, and I'm assigned the maintenance area, would I take a look at these 4 things if I have a conflict of, let's say maintenance is my air conditioner is broken? I mean, I guess we could use that. Would I just, what you're looking for? Are you looking to describe that conflict? I
Are you looking
mean,
for a process? Are you looking
yeah,
for a
I'm looking
process
for,
or documenting,
yeah,
hey, my
I'm
air
looking
conditioner
for
went off?
how we take I'm looking about how to do this so I could break it down, and not individually. We're still going to work as a group, but people
All
have
right.
different things.
So I'm gonna answer this question, and some of these questions that you're gonna be asking, and we're gonna stay on here a little bit longer than probably 7. If anybody needs to leave, you can. Just because I want to make sure we get this right. So when I'm thinking about this, I'm gonna answer this in 2 ways. In general, what kinds of things did your group, remember, this is going towards Providence Park, okay? What they're going to be reading. So I want to know, what kinds of things did your group think fit in property management? Or what kinds of things did your group think fit in neighbor to neighbor, or what they're end up calling neighbor care, it sounds like, okay? I personally don't need every single part of that broken down. But in order for you all to come up with a process for how things are reported, you might need to create that. But in a 3 to 5 single-space paper, 3-page single-space paper, you're not going to have time. You would spend the whole 3 to 5 pages just on all the conflicts. So if you've got more information, create an appendix, not required, but create an appendix where you've got maintenance broken down into the kinds of things that could be, where you've got pets broken down into the kinds of things that could be. I am fine with you having additional things in an appendix that are not part of the main narrative that a person might be reading. Now, I don't know, Kat, if that answered your question or not. I do think you all have to have a picture of where could the problems happen. And so spending time on this is valuable, okay? But the time that you spend on it and that you spend talking about it, that each individual, person in your group is looking at it, all of that information is like research background that you're going to use to build your process. It is not the major focus of your proposal. So this conflict landscape is truly the context that you considered when you were building your proposal. So you
Okay.
don't want it to overwhelm your proposal.
So the conflict landscape. So what I saw it as when I read it, like with some of the examples you had used, I used as, okay, here's one conflict. You talk about the conflict landscape, you talk about the partners and responsibilities involved in that conflict, you talk about the reporting and the referral process. I saw the conflict as the headliner and these as the steps to follow to describe it. So that's how I saw it. And I don't think I'm
Okay.
seeing it right.
No, I think, and especially when you see something like this, right? Identify which internal and external partners will be involved in addressing each type of conflict. And so if there are specific types of conflicts, you might have a table that you
Right.
end up having. So maintenance conflicts, pet conflicts, where you or down the side, or something that you actually say, this is how I see, these are the partners. So you could have a paragraph that says, these are the things we consider that are part of the conflict landscape. If you want to know more about those specific types of things we think could cause conflict, see Appendix A. Then you go to the number 2 and you say, based on these 4 types of conflicts, or however many there are, based on these 4 types of conflicts, we see that you need 2 distinct partners to actually help you deal with them. And we've divided that up into this table below as to who the kinds of partners. And I will say this, I mean, Tony, you asked for, I think, a list of all the partners. I would be less concerned about naming a specific partner in Pulaski County with by name, and I would be more concerned about saying this type of partner. So you don't have to actually know the partners to do that. You could say a restorative justice partner,
So
Okay.
it does help. It
a
does help a
security
little bit.
partner, so that you don't have to actually go and research the partners for them. That's their job, not yours.
Okay, so what you're saying with this systematic process is forget those examples of conflicts that you shared. This is a whole different thing where we're going to sit here and brain the most. We're not going to sit here, but we're going to have a meeting or have a live document for those people that can't attend that have a conflict schedule. And we're going to put in the most common types of conflicts in our property management area. We might describe those conflicts or whatever. And then in those conflicts, individual conflicts, we're going to put the partners and the responsibilities, if there is any. And these are the conflicts we decide that are relevant. So we might brainstorm, let's just say 20 conflicts, but 15 of them may not be relevant to Providence Park. So we're only
Right.
going to take the 5 that are relevant and then identify the partners' roles and responsibilities, the reporting and referral process, and then whatever number 4 was on the bottom. That's what I'm taking out of it now.
That is exactly right. You have
Okay,
described
okay,
it well.
so that helps. So what I was looking at was I was just looking at your examples and saying, oh, we need to do all those examples, which isn't correct. Those
Mm-mm.
were just examples that we can start at in a living document and have people take a look at them and work on them. And then the second part of the project is saying, okay, guys, let's get together and do this. Maybe you 2 do these 3, you 2 do these 3, and we'll focus on these 3. And then we come together with the draft.
Yeah. And the reason why I came up with all those examples was because in my own head, after I was in that interview with First Community and Mandy and Aaron, is I was having a hard time coming up in my own head about the differences between the things that they were dealing with. So I literally took the transcript, sorry, Tony, took the transcript of the interview, put it into ChatGPT, ask it to outline what would property management conflicts be based on what you heard, and what would neighbor to neighbor conflicts be based on what you heard. And that it created it. Okay. So I did that for myself as much as anything, and then thought that it would be helpful for you all to understand the scope of, so that you're not stepping on each other's toes. But even they said in their interview that it is hard to just, sometimes we are working on the same things together. So I realized that.
Okay, so this helps it narrow it down that this is a big project. The meaning of it is big, but the way that I was picturing it, I was making it way bigger
Yes,
than
yes.
it needed to be. You're trying to narrow it down just to give them something to start with, not do the whole thing for them.
Right. And this is why I thought it could be done in 3 to 5 single space pages.
Okay, now that gets me going. This is a suggestion for them to start somewhere. We're not giving them a whole entire guide.
They would love for you to give them a whole entire guide. But
Tony
Money,
would
money.
love to do it. I
But
guess.
as you know, they didn't even have a guide like this at First Community. So what they're going to end up having from you all, by the time they're going to probably end up having 10 to 12 pages, because they don't right now. They have so much in their face. They're going to have to flesh a bunch of stuff out, and we don't even know who all their partners are yet. But I mean, already they have an idea of the kind of things they're going to be doing. I just want to be able to provide a little bit more meat to the bone of what they're thinking about doing.
Real quick,
and that
Abel,
clarifies.
for the just kind of skipping ahead just a little bit to think for the flow chart. So in my mind, how I'm seeing this, we need to basically group our conflicts that we come up with within property management to say, if it falls under, if you determine after reading the document, after reading the referral or whatever, that it falls under pillar A, which is maintenance or whatever, this is where on the flow chart you will go.
That's
Yes.
still
And
too deep. I think
this
that's
is
still
how
a
you'll
little too
kind of,
deep.
what's that now?
I said, I think that's still a little too deep. I think
Well, hey,
she wants to make,
Well,
we,
maybe
we
not.
want, we
Maybe
want to make
not,
a flow
though.
chart, but I don't want to make a flow chart for every conflict
No.
because
no,
what,
no, I'm saying bucket the conflicts.
Yes.
And
Right,
then
yes.
if it falls under the bucket will say bucket A, you
Right.
follow this part of the flow chart. Not every single conflict, no. We just
No,
group
but
Maintenance goes here. Pets
Yes.
goes here.
Yes.
Lease violations go here. I mean,
right,
that may be
And-
your buckets.
right.
and
And
this
that's
is
what
who
I would
this is
mind.
who you talk to. Or
But
this
I
is
don't
who
want to
we
do
think
that
you would talk
for, I would want to describe a bucket in the step-by-step, but I wouldn't want to put every little conflict in there because that would be mind numbing and they don't need to read
Yeah.
15,000 pages of
Mhm.
down the rabbit hole type stuff.
No, most can probably be generalized into a handful of conflicts.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, and that's what I'm saying is create a generalized place for those conflicts to exist. And then if it falls in this bucket, this is the path we recommend you take. You contact support services or neighbor services or whomever or the restorative justice partner if it falls into this conflict, and then potentially have a kick out for them to say, we got to restorative justice and they said, no, this is not for us. It goes back to source.
I
We
mean,
don't
you
have
could
to get super
use
detailed
these
because we don't know
buckets
those.
here if you wanted to that are
Right.
already here that ChatGPT created, right?
And that's what we
Same
were
thing
going to,
here.
that's what we were going to use, but that's what we were having trouble thinking is how do we apply 1, 2, 3, 4 to those little things? But what you're telling us is for the first thing, just name most important, or are you saying we could use those buckets as
I'm
conflicts?
saying I am fine with you using these buckets.
Okay.
I'm fine with, I mean, I'm pulling up Jeff's and Doc Rice just so they can see theirs right now, but, you know, bucket for these, bucket for
Well,
this.
that helps us
Bucket for
that
this.
helps us divvy up the labor and say, you're looking at this bucket area. Tell us what you can come up with on your own, and then we can coalesce that data into the bucket that it actually belongs. Maybe it belongs in a different one or not, but
But
you
you
know,
may have
just kinda
different
give it-
buckets. Pets is even not is not even in
Yeah.
this one.
we
So
might have to make a
you do
miscellaneous
not have
bucket.
to use these buckets, but this is what ChatGPT created. Okay. So you may choose 4 of these. You don't have to use all of them.
Right, right. And that's what we're not going to do. So we would, and when we use those buckets, we can just generally describe what type of under the conflict landscape in one of those buckets. Let's say if we used one of Doc Rice's and Jeff's,
Okay.
for the let's say shared living and resource use.
Oh, there is pet conflicts here. So
Okay, let's say we use safety and personal boundaries, because I think that one's unique to them, and that's just their bucket. If we do the conflict landscape, we can just describe 2 or 3 of the small conflicts that are most pertinent under this. Identify the partners and the roles in those conflicts, and maybe some other partners that would be in this, and then work out a reporting and referral process and meeting rhythm and feedback loop. So we
Mhm.
could literally just do this in a chart, but the conflict landscape only has to generally.
Bigger picture.
Okay,
Top level.
that's what I wanted to make sure we weren't like diving into the details and making more work
But
for ourselves than needed
if
to
you
be.
wanted to list something like this where it's more detailed, then put it as an appendix. And
Okay,
just refer
that
out
makes-
to it.
That makes sense. And we can do that when we have, like, if I do a shared document with all these ideas of different, conflicts, if that's what it comes down to you if people have more, we can always put that in our appendix so it can be shared.
Kat, I can help with the appendix and help with squaring that appendix away. So don't worry about that.
Oh, no, I'm not too worried about the appendix. I just want to make sure, and I'm sorry, Jeff and Doc Rice, if I'm asking so many questions and taking up a lot of time. I just want to, I'm a type of person that works smarter and not harder, and I'm not trying to do the minimum, but I'm trying to be efficient and making sure that we're staying in the right direction.
So let me turn it over to them and just see if, and I appreciate all that you all have said. So Jeff and Doc Rice, have you met with your group yet?
Yeah, so we did meet last Thursday on Zoom. We didn't get too far, but you know, it was just kind of breaking that awkward first meeting, having a conversation of we don't know what we're talking about yet. So, I will say though, a lot of the questions that Kat and Tony did ask and bring up here did help at me think through it because I was originally thinking, okay, full on how to manual deep dive everything into it, and then you know, Kat asking some of those questions clarify like you know, no, it's not that deep. You know, it's just more of a guide and not a how to is what it is. So
Yeah, I mean, I
it
would
helped
love,
out.
if we had started this at the very beginning of the semester, you would have had time to go into and do a 20 to 25 page how-to thing, right? Or maybe 30 to 40 page how-to. But there is not a lot of time left in the semester. By the time I found out that they wanted a different change up as to what was going to be helpful to them, I had to realize and scale down what I thought would be reasonable expectations. And so so yes, it is. Would I love for you to do that? Yes. You can do as much as you want, but make this realistic. We're talking about, I mean, a 5-week project here, or about a month's project. Now, you've been working on this, you may not realize it, but you've been working on this for several weeks, you know, probably 2 months, because you've watched homelessness unsheltered videos, you interviewed someone, you know, so it's not like you haven't been thinking about it. You listen to the podcast, so you've been working on this. But actually being together in a group to actually do it, that's a different thing. All right. We'll talk more about those specific details of those parts of that systems guide next week. But I hope this gives you, well, first of all, I hope it allows you to breathe a little bit, that it doesn't feel quite as heavy. I'm seeing Kat shaking her head at least. Okay. I want more than anything for this to be used by them, for this to be helpful. I mean, I think you could kind of see her light up as she was watching that video. Besides the fact that it's kind of fun, I think. And so I think this will be useful to them. And just keep in mind the things that she was talking about, you know, and kind of where they're at. I would encourage you, if you want to go out and see the property, to get on their website and actually see if you can get a tour scheduled. That is not a requirement, because I know everybody's got different times and things that they could do. But, you know, that would be actually a fun, even if 3 out of 7 or 6 of your group members could go out there together and take a video, you know, that would be a fun kind of thing to do, but not required. So I didn't build that in, because I think you have some information already from all the stuff you've heard. So we're going to be spending a lot of time on the next few weeks, even though that there's readings, working on this project. Therefore, I have a surprise for you for next week for the readings. Tony, you know, I got back from this generative AI conference and just all kinds of ideas.
Yeah, I haven't had a chance to deep dive myself into what you
Yeah.
gave me, but it
So here's the thing. There are 4 articles for next week, but guess what? Because I'd rather you spend time on your research and your group project, I decided that I would ask Notebook LM to provide you nice summaries. It's on peer coaching. They're useful. This is a summary of the assigned readings, all of them, these 4. This is an integrated summary of how they relate to each other. And then if you prefer to listen to two people talking about them, there's a little podcast and there's a video. The videos that Notebook LM puts out are always shorter than the podcast. I don't care which of these you do, but I do not expect you necessarily to read all 4 of these articles. I'm giving you permission to see what AI can do for you. Since you're
I
working so
I
hard
think
on this
that's so
project.
much better, April. I think that's
So,
so much better because, the biggest, hardest thing about getting AI to do summaries for us while we try to read through the entire case study and all of that while we're trying to balance our other 3 other classes or work and kids and all of that, it's knowing that we got the information the instructor wanted us to get out of it. I mean, obviously, reading through the entire thing, if you know how to do case studies, you read the abstract, you read the intro, you read the key concepts, you read the lit review, the methods and the data analysis. And if you
yeah,
just go over to the
go to the
discussion,
discussion.
yeah, you don't need to read that 4 or 5
Mhm.
pages dedicated there, but most people
Yeah.
don't really know
But
that.
the reason why that's very true. The reason why I'm assigning these for next week is because you might build in peer coaching to your plan. I'm thinking more Jeff and Doc Rice potentially that might do that, the neighbor to neighbor stuff. But basically the key finding is that if they do skills training, this care thing, those things don't stick. But if they have peer-to-peer actually helpers, and I don't know how that would work with all the people, but with the missionals, maybe. And so, anyway, I don't even know if it fits, but originally when I put it in, you all were going to be we're coming up with a training plan, and I thought it might. But that's another reason why I'm like, I don't care if you get deep into these articles since I've changed the direction of the final project. So just so that you know, that's there. All right. I'm staying 1 week ahead of you all, trying to, at least at this point. Sorry, do we need to get and talk about possible tonight or the restorative circles video? But anyway, I hope that you still got a chance to take a look at those and so. All right. Any other questions before we head off tonight?
So I just don't be afraid of just a wee bit of flexibility on figuring out the project. I mean, when we're talking about, especially since it shifted focus from interpersonal to kind of a systems process for how this goes, I don't want our group to be worried about a
Oh,
little
no.
flexibility on trying to make it
So
work.
here's the thing, because I don't have any examples of what this looks like to give you, I have no idea if this is going to work. Just like I didn't for the AI as a third side. Now I know I'm going to use that as an assignment in other classes too,
Good
probably,
assignment.
because I loved it. I loved what the outcome was. Here, you may decide those 4 categories don't work. Those 4 things I'm asking you to do that actually, Dr. CC, I think we ought to be focused on these things instead. Please tell me, because I'm willing to allow you to do something different if you think that's more useful. But for those of us who are like me, who can't stand uncertainty, I feel like there needs to be some guidance. So rather than saying, just create something, I've given you guidance. If that guidance gets in the way, if the rules aren't working, reach out and propose something else. Don't just say, this stinks. Propose something else. Pitch it.
That works. That works beautifully. I just wanted to make sure we had, freedom allows
Oh.
innovation. And if we
Freedom. I mean,
can
I don't even really care
allow
what
for it.
final format this looks like. I mean, if you wanted to create a blog or a web page, I mean, those are, there are just, at this point, I don't even care. I just want something to be useful for them. And I want you all to learn how to do this kind of work in a meaningful manner, because we're really talking about third side. That's what this is all about. The conclusion chapter that you were to have read for this week is really talking about how you put all this together. You all are designing at some level, this might be too strong, a hosting, swarming kind of process for them to use. Now, you're not using those terms necessarily, but you're creating processes
I'd
that they
call it a
are
proactive
suggested.
third side. A proactive
Proactive third
third
side.
side.
Yeah, yeah. So, and you're using, I mean, I know it's like, well, how do you tie all this stuff in? I'm not requiring you to, actually accept what the other thing that's happening is that the individual paper, which I'll talk about next week too, that's where you're going to reflect on your processes that happen in the group. And that's where you're going to be able to apply URI and the Hocker and Wilmot book, because I'm expecting there to be a little bit of conflict in your groups, just discomfort or disagreement or frustration. And how did you handle that? And so the underlying, that's the process part that it may not come through in terms of what you present or what you're giving to them, but that's what you're going to write about in your individual paper. So, all right, we've stayed longer, but are we good? Without a break. So you guys have been warriors here. All right. I'll stay on here for a couple minutes if anybody wants to stay on. Otherwise, we'll see you next week. Okay. I'll stop the